The loudest man in the room is usually the weakest one, you just don't know it yet. That was the sentence Harold Bennett would repeat years later. But on that hot July afternoon in Mesa, Arizona, nobody in the packed Veterans Charity Gym had any idea what it meant. The building smelled like sweat, rubber mats, and fresh popcorn from the fundraiser stand near the entrance. Nearly 200 people filled the folding chairs around the center mat, all gathered for the annual Iron Valor Challenge, a local event where former service members and young fighters competed for fun and charity. The crowd was alive, cheering, laughing, recording everything on their phones. In the center of it all stood Tyler Boone, 28 years old, 6'3", built like a machine, wearing a black sleeveless shirt stretched tight over his shoulders. Tyler had become the face of the event for the past 2 years. Former Army Ranger, undefeated in the local grappling circuit, fast, strong, and confident enough to let everybody know it. He held the microphone in one hand and grinned like he owned the whole place. $1,000, Tyler shouted, pacing across the mat. To anyone in this building who can take me down. The crowd erupted. Some laughed. Some cheered. A few younger guys looked tempted, but nobody moved. Tyler smirked and shook his head. Come on now. Is that all we got? I thought Arizona was tougher than this. More laughter rolled through the gym. At the front rows sat retired Colonel Frank Mercer, arms crossed, watching carefully. Frank had seen Tyler at these events before. Strong kid. Good instincts. But too much pride. Tyler fed off the silence. Guess I keep my money. He lifted the stack of cash high enough for everyone to see. 10 crisp $100 bills. That got people talking. Some whispered about stepping in. Others knew better. Tyler had dropped 3 challengers earlier that day in less than 30 seconds each. Then, from the back of the room, a slow tapping sound cut through the noise. Tap. 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 At first, nobody paid attention. But the sound kept coming. Steady. Slow. Deliberate. Heads started turning. Near the entrance, an old man was making his way toward the mat. He looked to be at least 78. Maybe 80. Thin frame. Gray flannel shirt tucked into worn jeans. Old leather boots. A faded military cap. And in his right hand, a polished oak cane. The crowd went quiet for a second before laughter broke out. Tyler stared, blinking. No way, he said into the mic, laughing. Sir, this isn't bingo night. The room exploded. Even some of the veterans chuckled. But the old man kept walking. No smile. No anger. Just calm. His pale blue eyes stayed locked on Tyler. Colonel Mercer leaned forward in his seat. Something about the way the man carried himself felt familiar. Tyler lowered the microphone, still grinning. You serious, old-timer? The man stopped at the edge of the mat and looked up at him. His voice was low, steady, and clear. You said anyone? And for the first time that afternoon, Tyler Boone stopped smiling. The laughter kept rolling through the gym, bouncing off the walls like Tyler Boone had just been handed the easiest joke of the day. He stared down at the old man standing at the edge of the mat, still gripping that polished oak cane like it was part of him. Tyler looked around at the crowd, shaking his head in disbelief. Sir, I do not want to hurt you, Tyler said, loud enough for everyone to hear, his grin widening as more people laughed. Harold Bennett did not react. He simply stood there, calm as still water, his eyes fixed on Tyler with the kind of patience that made some people uncomfortable. Tyler stepped closer, towering over him by nearly 8 inches. How old are you? Tyler asked. Harold adjusted the brim of his faded cap. Old enough to know when a man talks too much. A few gasps slipped through the crowd. Tyler laughed, but it came out tighter this time. The audience loved it. Phones lifted higher. People could feel something unusual building. At the front row, Colonel Frank Mercer narrowed his eyes. He studied the old man carefully. There was something familiar in the posture. Not weak. Not fragile. Balanced. Controlled. Like every step was measured. Tyler circled Harold slowly, playing to the crowd. Look, this challenge is for fighters. Real competitors. You sure you did not take a wrong turn on the way to the pharmacy? More laughter. Harold glanced at the stack of cash in Tyler's hand. Keep your money, he said. Tyler blinked. Then why are you here? Harold tapped his cane once against the mat. To see if you understand what strength really is. The gym got quieter. Tyler's smile faded just a little. He had heard trash talk before, but this did not feel like trash talk. It felt like something else. Something heavier. Tyler looked over at the event organizers. You all good with this? The announcer shrugged, amused. If he signs the waiver. Harold reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded reading glass case. The crowd laughed again, louder this time, watching him carefully put on his glasses just to read the paper. Tyler folded his arms, smirking. This is unbelievable. Harold signed his name with slow, steady handwriting, then handed it back. Frank Mercer leaned forward as the paper passed by. He froze for half a second when he saw the signature. Harold Bennett. The name struck something deep in his memory, but he could not place it yet. Tyler stepped back onto the center mat and stretched his shoulders, loose and relaxed. Last chance to walk away, Tyler said. Harold slowly removed his old flannel jacket and folded it neatly over a chair. Underneath was a plain white t-shirt, thin against his narrow frame. Nothing impressive. Nothing threatening. Just an old man. Then Harold placed his cane gently against the wall beside the mat. The room watched in silence. And for reasons Tyler could not explain, seeing that cane set down made his stomach tighten. The gym had gone from laughter to something sharper now, the kind of silence that only came when people sensed a moment worth remembering. Tyler Boone rolled his neck and cracked his knuckles, trying to shake off the strange feeling growing in his chest. Across from him, Harold Bennett stood barefoot on the mat, his posture loose, almost casual, like he was waiting for a bus instead of stepping into a challenge against a man half his age. Tyler looked him over and smirked. You know, when this is over, I might frame that waiver. Eh? Few people laughed again, but it was weaker now. Harold did not answer. He simply looked around the room, taking in the crowd, the phones recording, the veterans sitting with folded arms. Tyler spread his hands wide. Everybody here is about to witness the shortest $1,000 ever won. That got the crowd back on Tyler's side. Someone shouted, Do not break him, Tyler. More laughter followed. Harold bent down slowly, touching the mat with his fingertips as if feeling its texture. Tyler shook his head. What are you doing? Harold looked up. Remembering. Tyler laughed. Remembering what? Harold stood straight. How quickly pride can fall. The words landed harder than Tyler expected. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You keep talking like you know me. Harold's face stayed calm. I know enough. Tyler backed up and bounced lightly on his feet, showing off his speed for the crowd. He was fast, light, explosive. Everyone in the room knew it. He had trained 6 days a week for years. State tournaments. Regional wins. Hundreds of matches. Across from him stood a man old enough to be his grandfather, thin as a fence post, with gray hair and stiff joints. It should have been funny. It should have felt easy. But Tyler could not stop looking at that cane leaning against the wall. Something about it bothered him. Colonel Frank Mercer stood up from his seat and walked closer to the mat, his eyes locked on the cane. The polished oak handle had carvings worn deep into the wood. Symbols. Numbers. Unit marks. Frank's breathing slowed. He had seen those markings before, decades ago. His face turned pale. He looked at Harold, then back at Tyler. Kid, Frank said sharply. Tyler glanced over. What? Frank hesitated. He was not even sure yet, but his gut screamed louder than his mind. You should rethink this. Tyler laughed in disbelief. Seriously? You are warning me? Frank looked at Harold again. Harold did not even blink. Tyler turned back to the crowd, throwing his arms up. Now everybody thinks this old man is some kind of secret ninja. The room laughed, but Frank did not. Harold slowly raised one hand. No tricks, he said. No fancy moves. Just balance. Tyler smirked. Balance? Harold nodded. That is all it takes. Tyler grinned and dropped into position. Good. Then let us see yours. Harold lowered himself into stance, simple and steady, his eyes calm, his breathing even. Around them, every phone stayed pointed at the mat. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And for the first time all day, Tyler Boone realized this was no longer about $1,000. The referee stepped between them, raising both hands for silence. The entire gym held its breath. Tyler Boone stood loose, shoulders relaxed, confidence still painted across his face, but now there was something underneath it. Something heavier. Doubt. Across from him, Harold Bennett barely moved. His feet were planted firmly on the mat, knees slightly bent, hands open at chest level, his face unreadable. It was not a fighter's stance Tyler recognized. It looked too simple. Too plain. Yet somehow it felt impossible to read. The referee looked at Harold first. You understand the rules, sir? Clean takedown. No striking. Harold nodded once. I understand. Tyler smirked. He sounds like he has done this before. The referee glanced at Tyler. Keep it respectful. Tyler laughed. I am being respectful. But Colonel Frank Mercer knew better. He stood just feet away from the edge of the mat now, staring at Harold's cane leaning against the wall. His eyes stayed fixed on the carvings. Then it hit him. The insignia. The markings. They were from the 31st Infantry Regiment. Korea. Hand-to-hand combat instructors. Frank felt his stomach drop. He had heard stories about one man from that unit. A man so skilled they used to call him Ghost Hands because recruits never saw him move before they were on the ground. Frank looked at Harold's face, and the years seemed to peel back in his memory. It could not be. Tyler bounced on his toes and rolled his shoulders again. Come on, old man. Show me this balance thing. Harold's eyes narrowed slightly. Balance is not for show. Tyler grinned. Then teach me. The crowd chuckled. Phones stayed raised. Nobody wanted to miss what they still believed would be a funny ending. Frank stepped forward suddenly. Tyler. His voice was sharp enough to stop the room. Tyler looked over, annoyed. What now? Frank swallowed hard. That man, you need to listen. Tyler shook his head. Colonel, with all respect, it is a charity event. Relax. Frank looked at Harold. Sir, are you Harold Bennett from the 31st? A ripple moved through the older veterans in the crowd. Harold said nothing at first. He only looked at Frank, then gave the smallest nod. Frank stepped back like he had touched fire. His face lost all color. Tyler frowned. Wait. You know him? Frank looked at Tyler, his voice low. Son, if that is who I think it is, you are not standing in front of an old man. You are standing in front of history. The room fell silent. Even the younger people stopped whispering. Tyler forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow now. History does not wrestle. Harold lifted his eyes to meet Tyler's. No, he said calmly. History teaches. The referee looked between them, uncertain now. Tyler clenched his jaw. He hated being made to feel small, especially in front of a crowd. He dropped lower into his stance, and waved Harold forward. Then teach me something. Harold exhaled once, slow and steady, and for the first time, Frank Mercer knew exactly what was about to happen. He just wondered if Tyler would understand it before it was too late. The referee looked at both men one last time, then stepped back and dropped his hand. The match began. Tyler Boone moved first. Fast. Sharp. Confident. He circled to the left, light on his feet, measuring Harold Bennett like a predator sizing up an easy catch. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, expecting Tyler to end it within seconds. Harold did not move much. He stayed centered, his feet rooted like they had grown into the mat itself. His hands remained open, relaxed, his breathing slow. Tyler feinted once, testing him. Harold barely reacted. Tyler smirked. "Too slow," he muttered. Then Tyler stepped in. Quick. Controlled. Not reckless. He reached for Harold's shoulders, aiming to shift his balance and bring him down clean. But the moment Tyler made contact, something strange happened. Harold was not where Tyler expected him to be. It was barely noticeable. Just a half step. Less than 6 inches. But it was enough. Tyler stumbled forward, catching himself before losing balance. The crowd gasped. Harold had not pushed him. Had not grabbed him. He had simply moved. Tyler backed off, confused. "Lucky," Tyler said, forcing a grin. Harold said nothing. He just watched. Colonel Frank Mercer folded his arms tighter. He recognized it now. Economy of motion. Minimal effort. Maximum control. The exact style he had heard old instructors talk about. Tyler circled again, slower this time. The confidence in his smile had thinned. He lunged again, this time aiming lower, faster, trying to control Harold's waist. Again Harold shifted. A small pivot. A subtle turn of the hips. Tyler found nothing but empty space. His hand brushed Harold's shirt, but he could not secure anything. The crowd went silent. Tyler stepped back, breathing harder now. "Stop moving," he snapped. Harold tilted his head. "That is the point." A few older veterans smiled. Tyler's jaw tightened. He hated being laughed at. Especially now. He rushed forward a third time, using more force, more speed, determined to prove this was still his mat. But Harold stayed calm. He watched Tyler's shoulders. His feet. His breathing. Then, at the exact second Tyler committed his weight forward, Harold turned. One step. One hand lightly touching Tyler's arm. One shift in balance. That was all. Tyler lost his footing and dropped to one knee on the mat, stunned. Not hurt. Just shocked. The gym exploded with noise. Half the crowd shouted. The other half stood frozen. Tyler looked up, breathing hard, staring at Harold like he had just broken the laws of physics. Harold stepped back, hands at his sides, calm as ever. "Balance," Harold said quietly. Tyler rose slowly, embarrassment burning hotter than anything he had ever felt. He looked at the crowd. Some were laughing now. Not mocking Harold anymore. Mocking him. Tyler wiped sweat from his forehead and glared at Harold. "That does not count," he said. The referee hesitated, then shook his head. "No full takedown." Tyler nodded fast. "Good." He looked at Harold, anger replacing confusion. Again. Harold studied him for a moment. "You are not learning yet." Tyler clenched his fists. "Then teach harder." And for the first time, Harold Bennett gave the faintest smile. Tyler Boone wiped his hands on his shorts and stepped back to the center of the mat, but this time the grin was gone. The laughter from the crowd had shifted. It was no longer aimed at Harold Bennett. Now it carried a different edge, one Tyler could feel pressing against his chest. He hated it. Across from him, Harold stood exactly where he had been, shoulders loose, breathing steady, looking less like a competitor and more like a man waiting for the weather to change. Tyler rolled his shoulders hard, forcing his confidence back into place. "All right," he said loudly, glancing at the crowd. "Enough games." His voice was sharper now. Less playful. Harold gave a small nod. "Good." Tyler frowned. "Good?" Harold's eyes stayed locked on him. "Games end when pride begins." Tyler ignored him. He lowered himself into stance again, this time slower, more focused. The room had become completely silent now. Even the phones seemed still. Colonel Frank Mercer watched closely, arms folded, his heart beating faster than it had in years. He knew Harold's style. He had heard stories from older instructors. They always said the same thing: you never saw the move until it was finished. Tyler circled right, studying Harold's feet. He was looking for something now. A weakness. A hesitation. Anything. But Harold gave him nothing. No twitch. No lean. No opening. Tyler exhaled and rushed in, but this time he changed his angle at the last second. Smarter. Faster. He aimed for Harold's side, hoping to catch him before he adjusted. For half a second, it looked like it might work. The crowd leaned forward. But Harold moved. Not fast. Just exact. One small turn. One hand at Tyler's wrist. One touch at the shoulder. Tyler felt his own momentum shift against him. Suddenly the floor was not where he expected it to be. His feet lifted for the briefest instant, and before he could understand how, he landed flat on his back on the mat. Clean. Controlled. Silent. No slam. No force. Just complete loss of balance. The gym froze. Tyler stared at the ceiling, blinking, trying to process what had happened. He was not hurt. But his mind was spinning. He had been taken down. Easily. The referee stepped in, stunned, then raised his hand. Point. Nobody reacted for almost 3 full seconds. Then the room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Disbelief. Some people stood up. Others looked at each other like they had just witnessed magic. Tyler sat up, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. He looked at Harold, who had already stepped back into place like nothing had happened. No celebration. No smile. Just calm. Tyler pushed himself to his feet, anger and embarrassment burning in his face. How? He demanded. Harold looked at him for a long moment. You fight the man, Harold said. I fight the movement. Tyler shook his head, still breathing heavy. That was luck. Colonel Frank Mercer stepped closer, his voice firm. No, son. That was skill. Tyler looked around the room. The same people who had cheered for him were now staring at Harold with awe. And for the first time in years, Tyler Boone felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt small. The noise inside the gym slowly faded, replaced by something heavier than excitement. Respect. Tyler Boone stood in the center of the mat, chest rising and falling, sweat dripping from his jaw. He looked at Harold Bennett like he was trying to solve a puzzle that made no sense. Across from him, Harold remained calm, his hands resting at his sides, his breathing so steady it barely looked like he had moved at all. Tyler glanced around the room and saw it clearly now. The crowd was not looking at him the same way anymore. The confidence he had built all afternoon was gone, cracked wide open in front of everyone. Colonel Frank Mercer stepped onto the edge of the mat, and looked at Harold with disbelief still written on his face. It really is you, Frank said quietly. Harold gave him a small nod. Tyler turned sharply. What does that mean? Frank exhaled slowly, almost like he was trying to steady himself. Harold Bennett trained close combat in Korea. 31st Infantry Regiment. Men used to say if he touched your shoulder, you were already beaten. The older veterans in the crowd began murmuring. Some exchanged looks. One man in the second row whispered, Ghost hands. Tyler heard it. His eyes narrowed. Ghost hands? Frank nodded. That was his name. Tyler laughed, but there was no humor in it now. You are telling me this old man was some legend? Harold looked down at the mat. Legends are just stories that survive. Tyler shook his head, trying to push away the pressure building in his chest. He had spent years building his reputation. Years proving himself. He was strong. Fast. Disciplined. And now, in less than 2 minutes, an 80-year-old man had made him look like a beginner. The thought burned. Why are you here? Tyler asked. Harold looked at him. You invited anyone? Tyler clenched his jaw. No. I mean, why really? Harold's eyes shifted to the crowd, then back to Tyler. For a moment his expression changed. Something deeper. Sadder. Because I have seen what pride can cost. The room stayed still. Nobody laughed now. Harold walked slowly to the side of the mat and picked up his cane. Tyler watched him carefully. Frank stepped closer to Harold. "I heard you disappeared after the war," Frank said. Harold nodded. "I went home." "And never came back?" Frank asked. Harold rested both hands on the cane. "Some lessons do not belong in crowds." Tyler stared at him. "Then why today?" Harold looked straight at him. "Because I heard your voice before I saw your face." Tyler frowned. "What does that mean?" Harold's grip tightened slightly on the cane. "It sounded like a young man I once trained. Strong. Gifted. Certain he could never lose." Tyler swallowed. Something in Harold's tone felt personal now. The gym had gone completely silent again. Even the people recording lowered their phones. Harold looked down for a moment, then back up. "That young man did not make it home." Tyler's anger faded, replaced by something else. Confusion. Curiosity. And for the first time that day, Tyler Boone wanted to hear what came next. Tyler Boone stood still, his breathing slower now, his anger cooling under the weight of Harold Bennett's words. The gym felt different. The energy had shifted completely. What had started as entertainment had turned into something nobody expected. Harold rested both hands on his cane and looked past Tyler, as if staring into a place far beyond the walls of the building. "His name was Daniel Cross," Harold said. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. 19 years old. Stronger than everyone else in his unit. Faster, too. He thought that made him untouchable. Tyler listened without speaking. Around them, nobody moved. Harold continued. "Daniel could run 5 miles in under 30 minutes. He could outlift every man in his squad. He could win every sparring match. But he had one weakness." Tyler swallowed. "Pride." Harold nodded. "Pride makes you stop listening." Tyler looked down. Harold tapped his cane softly against the mat. "I trained him for 6 months. Every day I told him the same thing. Strength fades. Speed slows. But discipline and humility stay with you." Harold paused. His eyes grew distant. "One day he ignored orders. Thought he saw a shortcut. Thought he knew better." Tyler could feel every eye in the room on him now, but for once he did not care. He was locked into Harold's story. "What happened?" Tyler asked quietly. Harold's jaw tightened. "He did not come back." The words landed like a stone in the room. Even the air felt heavier. Colonel Frank Mercer lowered his head. He had heard enough stories to know exactly what Harold meant without needing details. Tyler looked at Harold differently now. Not as an old man. Not as a challenge. But as someone carrying something much older and heavier than age. "So you stepped up because of me?" Tyler asked. Harold nodded once. "The way you spoke. The way you looked at people. I saw him again." Tyler felt the shame rise in his chest. He thought about the crowd he had mocked. The way he had laughed at Harold. The way he had treated the challenge like proof of his worth instead of a chance to test himself. Harold stepped closer, his voice softer now. "You have talent, Tyler. Real talent. But talent without humility is a loaded truck with no brakes. It feels powerful until it crashes." Tyler stared at the mat. For the first time in years he had nothing to say. No comeback. No joke. No defense. Harold placed a hand lightly on Tyler's shoulder. The same shoulder Frank had said meant defeat decades ago. But this touch felt different. Not defeat. Guidance. "I did not step up to embarrass you," Harold said. "I stepped up because someone should have stopped Daniel sooner. Nobody did." Tyler looked up, his eyes clearer now. "And what now?" Harold gave him the faintest smile. "Now you decide what kind of man you become." The crowd remained silent, waiting. Not for another takedown. Not for another challenge. But for Tyler Boone's answer. Tyler Boone stood in the center of the mat, surrounded by silence, staring at Harold Bennett's hand resting lightly on his shoulder. It felt strange. That same hand had put him on the ground twice without effort, yet now it carried no force at all. Only weight. The kind of weight that came from years, from mistakes, from lessons paid for the hard way. Tyler looked around the gym. The same crowd that had cheered his challenge now watched him with a different kind of attention. Not excitement. Expectation. He swallowed hard and stepped back, looking down at the stack of $100 bills still sitting on the table beside the mat. $1,000. It had felt so important an hour ago. Now it looked small. Tyler took a deep breath and faced Harold. "I was wrong," he said. His voice was low at first, almost uncertain. Then he lifted his head and said it louder. "I was wrong." The words echoed through the room. Nobody laughed. Nobody mocked him. Harold studied him for a moment, then nodded. Tyler turned toward the crowd. "I thought this was about proving I was the strongest man here." He shook his head. "But strength is not just muscle." Colonel Frank Mercer smiled quietly from the side. Tyler looked back at Harold. "I get that now." Harold rested on his cane again. "Understanding is the easy part," Harold said. "Living it is harder." Tyler nodded slowly. "Then teach me." The words surprised everyone in the room, maybe even Tyler himself. Harold looked at him carefully, measuring something deeper than balance now. After a long moment, Harold gave a small nod. "Tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock. Sunrise." Tyler blinked. "Here?" Harold smiled faintly. "No. Here is too loud." A few people chuckled softly. The tension broke, replaced by warmth. Tyler reached for the money and held it out to Harold. "You earned this." Harold looked at the cash, then shook his head. "Keep it." Tyler frowned. "Why?" Harold tapped the cane once against the floor. "Put it where it belongs." Tyler looked over at the charity box near the entrance. Without hesitation, he walked over and dropped the entire stack inside. The crowd erupted into applause, louder than at any point that day. But this time it was not for winning. It was for understanding. Harold picked up his old flannel jacket and slipped it on. As he turned toward the exit, Frank Mercer stopped him. "I never thought I would see ghost hands again." Harold smiled without looking back. "Neither did I." Tyler stepped forward one last time. "Harold." The old veteran stopped. Tyler stood straighter now, different than before. Humble. Grounded. "Thank you?" Harold glanced over his shoulder. "Respect keeps you standing, son. Pride puts you on the ground." Then he walked toward the doors, the sound of his cane tapping against the floor growing softer with every step. Tap. 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 Tyler stood there long after Harold was gone, staring at the empty doorway. For the first time in his life, he understood something no trophy had ever taught him. Sometimes the strongest man in the room is the one who has nothing left to prove.